Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Juggernaut, and today I'm bringing you a list of video games that are surprisingly still not dead. Now, before we begin, about 20 or so disclaimers, as it usually goes. First of all, what is a dead game depends very much on your definition of, said game, right? To me, a dead game is essentially a game whose audience has stopped growing, and you have a lot of difficulty finding a good multiplayer game within it. Because, dead games usually apply to multiplayer games, not single-player franchises, and so on and so forth. But, to me, a dead game is one that you are able to find multiplayer games of it, but it's usually with the same people, and the audience is fairly small. The player base is rather small. So, that said, let's get into, the actual video in a moment, but a couple of other things. The game you're watching right now in the background is Banner Saga. This is not one of the games I'm featuring, this is just something to keep you entertained while I, ramble on about my disclaimers and everything and try and not piss people off, essentially. This is an entirely subjective video, and I urge you to remember that. This is entirely subjective, and the only reason why certain games are here and other games aren't is because I felt like it, essentially. That is the only reason why certain games are here and other games aren't. These are the games that I find surprising that they're not dead, and I find somewhat entertaining or worthwhile mentioning. If your favourite game isn't here and you're surprised that it's not dead yet, then, I'm sorry, but as I said, this is an entirely subjective list. Furthermore, I do not have gameplay of all of the games that I'm going to mention. Why? Because I don't have some $200 to spend just on recording footage for one YouTube video in specific. And other than that, it would be incredibly difficult, even if I did have that kind of money, to just, record 2 or 3 minutes of each game and put it into a video. It would take a lot of time, and yeah, I just don't have that kind of will or time, shall we say. So, I believe that is everything addressed. If I forgot something, I'll mention it down in the comments. But yeah. Without any more excuses or stupidity of any other sort, let's get on with the actual video that you came here to see. So, the first game we are talking about is Diablo II. With or without the expansions doesn't really make a difference. Diablo II is a game that is, I dare say, massively popular relative to its age today. This is especially surprising if you consider that Diablo 3 got released and it had a bunch of expansions and had a lot of time to mature and get patched and fixed and all that, and it's a proper good game right now, played and loved by many people. Diablo 2 sort of is still there, and there's people playing it, both online, offline, privately with their friends, or on multiplayer, open games that you can join. Diablo 2 is still a big thing. You need to go out of your way and look for people that still play it, because they do exist, and there is a lot of them. I myself am actually one of them, if you can believe that. A friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, about a year ago, bought me Diablo 2 and the expansions. And we played that game for a couple of weeks, actually, which was an incredibly fun experience. Now, fair enough, games like Diablo 3, Torchlight 2, things like that have came out, and new engines, new graphics, new gameplay, different era and all that stands. Fair enough. But there is something about Diablo 2, there's that sort of X factor, if you forgive the pun. There is just something that makes this game so different and so worthwhile playing, even to this day, so many years after its release. It is a very old game, but it doesn't stop it from still being popular for some reason among many people. So, what do you think about this? Is this shocking to you? Because I was very surprised about a year ago to find out that this game is still a big thing. Anyways, that was Diablo 2. Moving on to the next game. Continuing in the same style of old-school games, Quake 3 Arena. Though really all of the Quake series, and I was considering about putting Doom in here as well, though it's slightly less relevant, I feel like. So, what's the deal with Quake? Well, the reason for Quake 3 Arena being very much active, still on Steam and still alive, I believe is the lack of similar games. Fair enough, there have been some that are trying to go with the same style of gameplay, but no one managed to nail that particular feel, that particular style of game. No one managed to make a Quake clone. Not really, at least not a very successful one. Now, fair enough, with the new release of Doom, that's the, I guess technically Doom 4 with the Doom 2016 one, we're going maybe towards that style of gameplay again, and we'll see how it works out, but, yeah, Quake 3 Arena, massive, to this day. You can play it on Steam with no difficulty whatsoever, but I will extend this to really all the Quake games, as I said. As far as the original Quake is concerned, you might have very small issues running it on modern systems. It can be done, but you might run into some small issues, whereas Quake 2 runs plug and play, basically. Yeah, no, that's not a term that you can technically use for a game. It's, plug anything in, but hey, yeah, just install it and run it, and here's the amazing thing, okay? Some of the features in Quake Arena and Quake 2 are fascinating to us even today. What do I mean by this? Well, some things that the AI does, sure, it's not the best AI in the world, it's an old game, yada yada yada, but some of the things that you can do in these games, and the level design, especially, God, the level design, just top quality level design, but, besides that, some of the things that the AI does, namely I'm talking about provoking the AI into hitting one another, like, two of your enemies that are hitting you, you can position yourself as to enrage one of them to start shooting the other person, and, little details and interactions like that in Quake 2, and then, of course, the multiplayer, amazingly fun shooter that is Quake 3 Arena on Steam. All of these games, just high-quality games that are just not gonna die out anytime soon. They've been around for ages, and they will continue to be. These are really, really one of the golden gems of gaming. They really, really are. And here's hoping that we get more games in that style, and here's hoping that someone finally manages to nail down the formula and make a successful game in this of this type, shall we say. So, that was Quake Arena. Moving on. Chivalry Medieval Warfighter. Not the DLC Deadliest Warrior. That's a special story of its own for a different time. Specifically, Chivalry Medieval Warfighter. Why, how, and so on and so forth. Well, first of all, this is not a dead game in any definition or in any respect. It is fairly old, and there are even similar games to it. War of the Roses, there's that Viking one as well, there's DLC again, which is not really a DLC, it's sort of an expansion on types on its own, it just is a different game to be honest, but hey. Regardless, it is this one that sparks people's attention the most, and the one that is the most played right now, so why? Well, it's just incredibly well executed. I think it's the best game that executes these things, the following things incredibly well. What does it execute very well, Jug? Combat. Movement, to maybe a lesser extent, but movement as well. It executes team play, not really. There's still people who are going to try and team kill you and all that, of course, but game modes, very fun. Weapons. The number of weapons, the way they feel, the way they act, the way you use them, just perfectly executed. Realism. Now, you may laugh for a minute. This is not entirely a realistic game, I accept. Actually, just punched the microphone, I'm very sorry. Fair enough. However, it does have key elements of realism that make it that much more fun. As a result, this game is one of the most alive games, if that makes sense, of this type that you can find. There are new people picking this game up. I hesitate to say every day, but, you know, there are low-level guys. I actually picked this title up myself a couple of weeks ago and started playing it, not really regularly, but, you know, every now and again. And there are guys that are my level. A couple of levels above me, yeah, fair enough, but there are guys that are on my skill level that I play with. It's not the same dude over and over again. There's a huge variety. Basically, my point is there's a big player base, okay? Put it as simply as I can. And it's an incredibly fun, good game. Not much more to be said, but the main point is very much still alive, unlike, you know, well, actually, that's not fair. Very, very active player base, very healthy player base, whereas other games of this type have sort of failed to produce that longevity. This one is just, you know, shining all 5 stars, or 10, or however you want to rate it, whatever. Great game, and very much still active and alive. So, if you're ever remotely interested in this, I suggest you pick it up. It's incredibly cheap. You can find it on G2A for like $1.50 or $2 or something like that. My personal advice, don't bother with the DLC. It actually has less players than the base game, which is paradoxical a bit considering the DLC is newer, and yeah, it doesn't matter. I keep calling it a DLC, it's not exactly a DLC. Chivalry, Deadliest Warrior, that thing is what I mean. Anyways, there are other games, of course, that you can slash people and meet in medieval armor with. Mount & Blade Warband, which is actually going to be mentioned in this video later. So I think I just created a paradox within my own video and just ruined everything. So let's just move on to the next game. Battlefield Bad Company 2. Explanation follows. In an age where Battlefield games are dying rather quickly, not dying in the sense of, you know, the definition of a dead game that I mentioned at the start of the video, not in that sense, but compared to the original amount of people that buy a Battlefield game, let's take, for example, Battlefield 4, compared to the amount of people that own a copy, there is a shockingly low amount of people that play it right now, play it actively. Battlefield Bad Company 2 has the fortune to be on Steam rather than Origin, which gives it a huge boost, objectively speaking. Not any, you know, I'm not talking about the quality of service, I'm talking about the player base. So, there's also something different about Battlefield 2. Remember that word, different. There's something very different about Battlefield Bad Company 2. This game, people swear by this game, those who play it actively, that this is the best Battlefield game ever released. And I can see some truth to that. Now, fair enough, Battlefield 4 is a great game. Hardline, no. No, I'm just going to draw the line there and say, no. But, Bad Company 2, there is a lot to be learned from this. Now, I am someone that is very, very excited about the future of the Battlefield franchise. Are we going to go back to World War II on one hand, which would be very exciting for me? Are we going to go far into the future and, well, who knows what awaits there? I don't know. I'm very excited to see what happens, but it is vital that they learn from Bad Company 2. The game just feels different. Killing people feels different. Shooting the guns feels different. The maps, the terrain, the destructible terrain, the vehicles feel just better for a lot of people. I mean, I'm trying to be objective here, but for a lot of people, it just feels better. And fair enough, compared to the latest Battlefield game, well, actually the second latest one, because Hardline is shit and most people don't play it. Objectively speaking, it's got bad reviews. Most people think it's bad. So, Battlefield Bad Company 2, very different, very, very different story. Fair enough, it might not have as many players as Battlefield 4 does. Actually, I don't know the data for that, but it doesn't exactly make much of a difference. This game is old, ergo cheaper, and a lot of people seem to think it's better. Which explains why, unlike most other games of sort of this style, it doesn't die after a certain period of time. Very active game. People still love it, people still play it, people still claim that it's the best Battlefield ever made. There is truth to that. There is some truth to that, definitely. There is a lot that can be learned from BC2, and you know, it's just ultimately comes down to a lot of people that agree on the same thing, which is this is a very good game and they should play it actively still to this day. And you can find people that play it. You can find multiplayer servers, however many you want, game modes, you know, whatever you want. So, yes. Alive and well and a healthy game. And something that we should always remember, and something that I believe DICE should remember as well. Moving on. RuneScape. RuneScape 1, that is, the original from 2001. Believe it or not, this game is very much still alive. Why? Well, for starters, I think I've got the wrong logo. I couldn't find a good RuneScape 1 logo, so I just went with this one. I think this one's from RuneScape 3. I could be wrong. I don't know. Actually, I'm fairly certain this is RuneScape 3. Regardless. So, how does the story go for RuneScape? Well, RuneScape was the very first MMO game for a lot of people. It's not the first one ever made, at least I think not. But for a lot of people, it was their very first MMO game. And, of course, as a result, they're going to have certain sympathies and treat it differently to, you know, as opposed to pretty much every other game on the market. However, I'd just like to stress out that this is a 2001 game. Fair enough, it's been updated a ton. It's been released. It's been released. Yes, it's been released. Obviously, but graphical updates, patches, and then expansions in the form of new quests and stuff have been added. I suppose not expansions in the traditional sense of the word, but you know, expansions in the style of expanding the content. In the sense of expanding the content of the game have been added since, but let's start from this. Let's start from something that's interesting, I believe. MMOs are hard to kill. Would you agree? I think you should. MMOs are very hard to kill. That sounded a bit narcissistic, I'm sorry. But yes, MMOs are hard to kill. I'm going to say that about 6 times and then everyone's going to hate me, I know. And by the way, there goes the voice. I'm sorry. Better. Anyways, take a look at World of Warcraft. That game is never going to die, is it? Well, actually, that's not true. I'm going to die first, and then World of Warcraft's going to die, which means it's never going to die from my perspective, right? So, what about less popular games, though? What about Terra? Is Terra ever going to die? Doesn't seem like it. I mean, you know, an MMO is truly dead when the servers are shut down. Up until that point, there's people playing it, and there's usually a pretty big amount of people playing it, simply by the virtue of the fact that it's an MMO. Why is this so? I think it's fairly obvious. People invest a lot of time into it, and a lot of money into it, often. Thousands upon thousands of hours people spend on developing their characters, grinding, you know, making new friendships with people, real people in the game. This is important to them. This entire notion is very important to them, and they remember the game very fondly, even if the core gameplay elements aren't that good, by virtue of the fact that it's an MMO. It's made better by your experience of it, because, you know, there's other factors than just the core gameplay elements that influence your experience, and so on and so forth. I'm going to try and move a bit quicker here. My main point is 2001 release, absolutely still alive. You can jump in, you can go to any town, any place, anywhere, and you can find people still running around doing quests. Since 2001, which is scary now that I think about it. Actually, that's terrifying. Holy shit. Okay. But, take a look at Star Wars The Old Republic, a less popular MMO than WoW or Terra. A new Star Wars film gets released and the population explodes. Then it sort of dies out, and then, you know, by the time the second part of Star Wars, the new Star Wars trilogy is going to get released, and then the population is going to boom again. But fair enough, that's a different story. I mean, that universe is being used elsewhere, which I guess gives the game special treatment, but the point is, even now, there's a lot of people playing that game, and it's a fairly old game, to be honest. Now, fair enough, there are still DLCs and expansions being made for it, which is, you know, it means the development on it is still active and and so on and so forth, whereas RuneScape is basically the same, only years backwards. I mean backwards in time, not backwards in any other sense. So, yes, other than being one of the first MMOs for a lot of people, the game is actually very good. It uses some design decisions, concepts, and gameplay mechanics that I think it's safe to say no other game does, really. I think EverQuest uses some of it, and games like that, but most MMOs don't. I mean, it has its unique thing that drives it on, and it makes it appealing for people still to this day. So, RuneScape, very much alive. Moving on, and the next one is interesting. For a specific reason. As promised, Mount and Blade Warband. Now, fair enough, it might not come as that much of a surprise, considering that this game got the Viking Conquest expansion released for it rather recently, so well, I say recently, it's not that recently, but, you know, in recent memory at any rate. So fair enough, it might not be that surprising that it's you know, still alive and there's still people playing it. It's not exactly the point of why I'm putting it here. There's one thing, and one thing alone, keeping this game still alive. Mods. Let this be a lesson to developers across the world. Mod support is vital. The new Mount and Blade Warband is going to be a thing, thanks to Paradox Interactive and, you know, the guys that are actually developing it, but Paradox is a publisher, so whatever. I guess, you know, it's equally as Paradox is equally important in that entire equation. Regardless, though, I digress. The amount of mods for this game is mind-boggling. You can find orcs, cowboys, aliens, and Star Wars, and I say aliens and Star Wars, I suppose it goes together. Yeah. You can find all those things in mods for this game. Insane, and I have to make a confession, okay? Hear me out? I own this game, and I played the hell out of it at one point, with all sorts of mods, and then I uninstalled it, and I was too lazy to reinstall it and record footage for you guys, so I just have a slideshow. Sorry. I'm just being lazy. It would take ages to actually make a video and show you everything I want to show you, so I guess slides is a much, much easier option, and as I said, I'm sorry, but yeah, I'm just being lazy at this point. Yeah, what was I going to say? Thank you, mod authors. Thank you very much for making this game still alive. There's also Roman Legions and that entire mod, which has a ton of players still playing it. Napoleonic Wars, which is, I guess, the biggest mod, turned into an actual huge expansion thing that's ultra popular and people still play that. And that's the reason why people still play this game and it's still active, other than the fact that it's damn good and there's not a lot of games out there like it. I don't think there's any, actually, that are quite like it. Yeah. Especially not with the incredible degree of mods and all that, as I already mentioned, but specifically like the vanilla game, I don't think there's any quite like it. Sure enough, you can do combat, but the blend of strategy and combat and multiplayer and all that, and controlling a huge army and yeah, I say huge, it's like a couple of hundred people, it's not exactly huge, but again, there's a very simple mod, a couple of megabytes, that just lets you control 1,000 troops on one battlefield if your computer's powerful enough, so yeah. Big game, important game, and if you want to pick it up today, there's a single player, you can play it all you want, which is, I guess, kind of not important whether the game's dead or not, if you can just play single player, but multiplayer as well, completely not dead. Hundreds of mods out there, hundreds of massive full conversion mods for you to try. Tons of fun. There we go, that would be pretty much it for Mount and Blade. Moving on, Age of Empires 2. I don't have a lot to say about this game. That's it. No, I'm joking, but that is partially true. It's a strategy game, a very old strategy game, And one of those strategy games that made me want to play not just it for a long, long period of time and over again, but made me want to play different strategy games altogether. Actually, I think it's maybe not the one that got me really, really heavily into RTS and even grand strategy games like Paradox's grand strategy games and all that, but actually, yeah, one of those that I started off playing strategy games. One of the first that I played was that particular one, that and Warcraft, which I'm going to mention a bit later on, not as a separate thing. But yeah. Okay, so why is this? Is it not dead? No. Huge following. You'd be shocked. I was shocked. I learned this not so long ago. It has an incredibly strong multiplayer scene, an incredibly strong player base that still plays this game to date. And that's all I'm going to say. Graphically, the game isn't that bad, actually. Now, fair enough, it isn't like 1990 something, you know, so you'd expect it to be a disaster, but in all fairness, it's one of those games that aged very, very well. I was going to put Rise of Nations here, but that game is pretty much dead. You know, there's barely anyone playing it. There's a limited player base, so on and so forth. That game aged very well too, and it's very much reminiscent of this, of Age of Empires. So, of course, they have key, massive differences in the way they do things in both games, and the way one went and the other went in another direction when it comes to development and troops and the way you manage your empire and stuff like that. That's just in-depth discussion right now, and I don't want to get into. But Age of Empires 2, massive following. I'm shocked. Don't get me wrong, in a great way. This is good news because it's a good game. There we go. That's about everything, I think, for Age of Empires, of course. Moving on. And the final game for the video, I believe, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Now, here's the thing. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is an amazing game. Let's put that out there. I think I've said this sentence for every game in this video, which I'm getting a bit boring now, aren't I? But it has a special something. And you have to admit that. It has a special something. Grand Theft Auto 4, Grand Theft Auto 5, Grand Theft Auto episodes from Liberty City, and even Grand Theft Auto Vice City don't have. That feel, that something, that charm, particular charm of this game, is not something that I personally just feel. Is a lot of my friends feel that as well. And I suppose it comes as no surprise, even though it's a bit contrary to the title of the video, but let's just leave that aside for now. I guess if you follow that logic, it comes as no surprise that Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is a very popular game still today, but again, if you take a look at when the game was released, the multiplayer scene for this, as well as the mods for this game, are incredibly strong. Fair enough. It's actually a bit paradoxical, but pirated copies of this game are doing multiplayer very well. Dedicated dedicated pirate servers are very, very active and alive for this game, as well as official and, you know, servers you can get on with a legit copy of the game, as you rightly should be able to. That's all fine and dandy, but pirate copies of this game are incredibly popular as well. I suppose it comes from the fact that this was released at a different time, where a lot of us didn't really understand that pirating a game is, in the global grand scheme of things, actually bad. And, it's an old game. Most of us were kids back then. Some of us were slightly bigger kids, but hey. Still today, you can buy the game very cheaply, but people seem to choose to play pirate versions of it. It mostly comes from, non-American and say, Western countries-based communities and servers, but they exist, and it's the number and the quantity of people that play this game multiplayer online that is just incredible for me. It's very, very surprising, and I suppose what is to be blamed, quote-unquote, for this? I don't know. It has something. It has that X factor which I mentioned before. It has that sort of unique feel and charm to it that the other games don't. Is it the graphic style? I think it's the general style and theme of the game, the way it's been done. I just sort of don't feel that in GTA 5 and 4. There is something so good about the characters that makes them so memorable in the single player, which, again, I think is just... I've spent most of my childhood playing GTA San Andreas, and time well spent, and I suppose it only makes sense that this game is, in a multiplayer sense, incredibly active still today. So, yeah. That was... nostalgia may or may not have just hit me like a truck, but, yeah. That game, thumbs up. Still active, still great, and, yeah. That would be pretty much all for the games that I wanted to tell you guys about that are surprisingly not dead yet. Thank you very much for watching this video. My name has been Juggernaut. For the grand finale, I have World of Tanks for you, a quick little replay to show you, and I'm going to talk about this game for just a second, as well as a couple of others, honourable mentions, shall we say. Namely, well, Warcraft, the strategy games, are still very much active. StarCraft, Brood War, still very much active. Games like those that I haven't mentioned, that some of them I really do love, but for some of them, either I didn't find them interesting enough to put them in a video, or I didn't think that they were I didn't think it was surprising enough that they were still alive. I mean, why is Warcraft, the strategy game, still alive and active? Because of the rich lore of Warcraft, and because it's an amazing game that we spent our childhood with. Until another strategy game of Warcraft comes out, that one is still going to be played pretty much by, everyone that has a remote interest in Warcraft. I.e., not World of Warcraft, just Warcraft. So, that's about it, right? Quake War's Enemy Territory, which now that I've remembered the name of that game, I'm going to go and play it probably, because I've played that game so much in the past. Oh dear, like years ago. The first two Halo games as well, because they're on the PC. Yes, people still play those, if you can believe it. Call of Duty 4 on the PC, which I haven't... Maybe I should have covered that in this video, although I don't really have much to say about it. Don't really know why people play it. I mean, I don't mean that as a negative thing, but maybe I'm going on... Maybe I'm just rambling at this point. Some more honourable mentions are Star Wars Battlefront 2, SWAT 4, I guess, to an extent, although it's not that alive. You can get it to work and then play around with it. There's also, until not so long ago, Unreal Tournament as well, the latest one. Hell, I suppose Half-Life as well, to a certain extent. Although that's mostly single player, but still, many people play it every now and again because there's no Half-Life 3, and... Okay, let's just not talk about Half-Life 3, it just creates weird responses. The Stronghold series of games, Counter-Strike, StarCraft, Brood War, Korea, Nostalgia again, great story, good strategy game, units that we can't see in StarCraft 2, competitive scene in Korea, obviously, as I said. Yeah, stuff like that I haven't mentioned, and there's tons of games that I haven't mentioned, obviously. These are just the games I found interesting, and, yes, now World of Tanks, really quickly. World of Tanks is a phenomenon, a huge social phenomenon. Why? Because it's still growing. Years and years and years after its release, the global population of World of Tanks is still growing, which is a phenomenon, okay? Something that I just really want to quickly mention, and I'm sorry if I didn't mention your game, as I already said, but I shall repeat myself for one more time. This is just sort of my subjective list of games that I thought you guys might find surprising that they are still alive and, might be interested in. Anyways, as I already stated, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe down below if you enjoyed this video, and share it around a little bit, because I spent so much time putting this together. It's not even funny. Yeah. I appreciate you guys. Really appreciate you guys watching this, and just thank you so much. Until next time, however, my name has been Juggernaut, and take care. Bye-bye.